Welcome back, everybody, to Tarot Journeys with Guy. How's everybody doing out there? I hope everybody had a good weekend. I had a pretty good weekend. As you can see, I got a lot of sun. Beautiful weather out here in beautiful Alberta. And right at the end of the day, a huge smoke cloud moves in from a forest fire way north of us. And it's just beginning. The beginning of our summer is here. And, it's so funny. And cause it was a lot of smoke. Okay. And so, I go around talking to people and ask, what do you think of this? And, do you know how this happens? And every single person says, yeah, they started. They start those fires. Now, and I mean, people have different sort of understandings around that. But it's just kind of like this thing of, okay, yes. It goes back to those yes moments of realizing like people are waking up and they're getting it. How they're getting it, well, different story, but at least they're questioning, at least they're speaking out, right? So this was a thing, and I hope in Canada and in the United States as well that people address this and stop it, right? Because it's pretty awful, but it's happening everywhere. Australia is the same deal, right? Anyway, that was one thing, right? It's kind of an interesting sort of beginning of our time period, regardless of how we want to, engage the world. Well, there's certain things we do have to pay attention to, and this is what we've been talking about. So now we're going to check in, look at what we need to see about the next coming events for this week, and what else? What other guidance? What other messages do we need to receive about what's happening in our crazy world right now? And I mean, there is so much going on, as always. But I just feel this sort of forward motion with the energy of things, regardless of how this is playing out in the world or this is playing out. How much of this is real and how much of this is part of the illusion, and where do we sit? Where does the human impulse, where does the spiritualized human impulse sit with this? Where do I sit with this? Okay. And I mean, this week, yes, I'm always kind of in tune with what's going on, like politically and within the world, but yet I also took a little, I didn't have to be so focused, right? And this is because there's a forward motion in my life that does coincide with what the events are in the world, but also a little bit aside from it, which is awesome. I think that's what's taking place. I think that is a byproduct of the awakening and is the real split in humanity, which from our side of it, that split isn't necessarily, that split that in humanity, like I just described, can be brought back together, is unified, whether both sides don't see it or not. But it becomes this simple equation of, yes, it is a part of the dualism of the good and the bad, of the human and anti-human, of life and death. Okay. And that's what we're getting to. But yes, there is a dualism in that. And that's part of our lesson plan. I guess it's been part of my lesson plan to not only embrace this, but also to achieve a certain, to also release it and to see how those opposing things, they're not really opposing. It's all one in a manner, right? And it's like this, the lesson of looking in the mirror and facing self. And, and that's really, that's how I see the world. And that's how I see when I do readings, and that's how I see engaging with YouTube and the audience, all you guys out there. I see it as also partly looking in the mirror, right? And every reading I do is really like looking in the mirror. And sometimes it can be very challenging. Like, this is what I feel. This is what I perceive taking place. in the human field and with the people that I'm engaging with and the interactions. And for the most part, it's pretty awesome. So let's get into this. Let's just do our first spread here where, we're going to look at what's going on this week. What do we got to look at? What's part of the lesson? What's part of the energy that we're all going to move through? And let's see what comes up, and then we'll see. We'll pull another spread. Okay, so ready? I forgot when I was saying what I was up to this weekend, the part in Canada, and I think in the States too, I'm not really sure, but it's Mother's Day today. So tomorrow, when this video comes up, it will be happy belated Mother's Day to everybody. Okay, so here in the present, so this is us right now. Interesting card. We've got actually 3 court cards here. So there's people. These are people. And especially when the card pops up in the center place and it's a court card, especially, and there's also the Page of Pentacles, because this can also be a person. It represents a person. It can represent a person, okay? Or a group of people. And so when we're talking about the world events and things, it can be a person. It can be many people. Because we're actually, what we're doing is trying to hone down on something that's very broad. And so the universe will give us what we're prepared for, what we need to hear. And sometimes, it may not make sense in the exact moment, but it will kind of unravel, right? And so you got to understand, when we do the world reads, this is what we kind of have to deal with, I guess, right? It's a funny way of saying it. That's what we have to sort of remind ourselves, because sometimes things come out and I'm not sure, but yet it does play out, and there's levels. There's always layers to the symbols. That's what the tarot is there for, is a language of symbol. Okay. So Page of Swords. So this is in the Page of Pentacles, all the pages can be this, but this page, what is it? It's this page, and the Page of Cups can represent an actual message. Okay. So somebody in a position of authority is there, and a negative position of authority is going to give a massive message, and it is to sway the people. Okay. Just gotta see what I'm picking up here, because this could be could be president, right? The supposed president, President Biden. Okay. And so, yet it could be this is sometimes a military card, or this is definitely a person that is in a position of authority. This could be a corporate head of some sort, or somebody big, but yet they're not being honest. They're not being truthful. This is definitely what I'm saying. This is a globalist. This is a deep stater. This is somebody that's been bought, but yet they are trying to present that they're not, right? This is what they've all been doing, but they're caught. All these guys are caught. So, but this is also maybe a group. This is a few things maybe, but there's this message trying to sway people. It is about the division. And see, this is what they do, is they purposely construct these sort of lines of division, and then they try to bring them back, right? It's like this opening up the noose, closing the noose. And it's sort of they create a straw man to blame everything on and make themselves look like the hero, right? And the person that's the good guy. Meanwhile, they're sort of concocting the whole thing. Okay. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with somebody that we know that's doing this, but they're presenting something, or a group, right? And this is a military thing. Actually, one thing that I thought of when I saw that was how all over, in Europe and in the States and everywhere, they're trying to gear up for this idea that there's going to be this war. There's going to be this war with Russia, for instance, right? With NATO and everything in the EU. But in the States, they're reporting how, and same thing, they're trying to build up their military, but they can't find people. They can't find young people to fill the ranks. that's what I saw. This was a part of their thing. Like and then I guess maybe that's what I'm picking up is sort of like their civil war is kind of failing. Like they can't even rely on the extremists that they're bringing in, that they're letting come into like across the borders. They can't really rely on it, right? What they need to do is sway the young people. And this is what we're seeing in the UK right now and in the way, like through voting. And we see it here in Canada where a lot of like these, I'm not going to mention the names, but these parties and these people get into power through the vote of that youthful energy, and usually like students and like this, and they're very socialistic, very communistic, and they're not aware of it. They're like totally, and this is what they're trying to do is impress upon that to sort of make a move. And it's been kind of hard going for them because they didn't, I think what the thing is when they started to sort of study this stuff and like advertising and how perception is manipulated and developing, cinema and the printed visual text and, like in TV and all of that. And then like the internet and social media, like that whole stream of it. They didn't suspect, like with the social media thing, that when you overwhelm and overload a human, they start to build up resistance. And that's what's happened with young people. They're so damn resistant now, which is good in a way, but it's like a natural response to all the crap that's being thrown at them. The next generation. And that's what they need. They're hard pressed to get them to do anything. Not entirely true, but it's this natural resistance to this stuff. This is what is part of the human form. It's what we all do, right? So that's good. That's a really good thing, right? So part of that is to bring attention to some of this stuff. Like a lot of people, like they're open to it now. This is also another thing of not letting these kind of messages that are being broadcast to throw us off of our mental game, because the sword represents the mind, okay? And mind and communication, thought, and how we sort of see. And it's funny, this, even though he's seated, it is an action in a way. First mindset. So we went through this part of it last week, I guess, the Queen of Pentacles and the women. So there were some women there were some things that popped up, good and bad, with some very prominent women, okay? Some things we needed to see the truth with them. The other thing too is this whole human trafficking, enslavement thing around these guys, what the Page of Pentacles can represent. That is also what's been coming out. And they're desperately trying to cover some of that stuff. And some like of these cutouts, I call them, because that's what they are. They're not actual like main players, like this P. Diddy thing. I never thought that Epstein was like a full, like he was the head of that thing. I don't think that. I thought he was handled. He was just an agent. And that's what they do is they push these people out and make it look like they're like the Epstein thing, like he's a multi-billionaire. But where did all that money come from? Well, and then, it's all this illicit stuff, but no, it's not that. It's a cutout. He didn't have it. It was in his name, but was it? These people have a different worldview, a different system, different way of approaching reality. And we've seen it, right? And so, yeah, and the scandals around these rings and what they do and how the intelligence communities and these deep staters have been influencing media people and music and stuff to push that agenda, right? And that comes out like with the P. Diddy stuff, but there's other stuff. There's lower rung, like, rings, businesses there that do this, right? And like, it's like almost like there's so much information that you can't stop it, right? There's like so much stuff coming out from like the border stuff with the people coming over what some people are calling illegals, right? But the migration, the UN migration thing, and bring in these people, and what happens to some of the young people that come over, right? And holy moly, man. Oh, but and that's the thing, it's not working. And they're trying to cover the tracks, right? And so, yeah, like, man, this is what happened in before President Trump got voted in the first time, when he became president, okay? And even during, but like, no matter, like, they kept trying to say, like the media and everything kept trying to project this thing of like, oh, everything is terrible, it's all falling apart. But man, like, the world was in a very good place. And I'm not saying it is entirely because of President Trump or any of that. Like, no, it's this thing of this energetic impulse. Like, we're moving towards something that is greater than what they're presenting. And they can't, like, they say like, oh, we're all doomed. But then you go outside, you go into your world, and it's like things are moving and ticking, and it's good. And it's like that with the economy, right? Like, I witnessed them purposely shutting down the economy over a long period of time. But like in 2016, 2017, man, it was so obvious. It was literally like Atlas Shrugged, where somebody took the dial of industry and just went, doo, dial of crazy up, and no more, right? And things subtly started to die in the downtown, like no activity, no business, right? But this is what they've been doing. And I think this is what we got to realize, right? We're kind of moving potentially into sort of like, I have been getting this feeling like, man, this is going to be like a year. It's going to be a really good year for a lot of people. Really positive, like materially, like financially, economically, but also like healthy relationships and healthy bonds and connections, man. And so some of us have to force ourselves to reconnect, because we've buffeted ourselves. We're isolated a little bit, right? Because of what's been going on. But it's time to sort of emerge, because they can't stop what's going to happen. And they've been saying that on the other side. And I've been saying that too with the deep state. You can't stop what these guys have triggered. But what they're triggering isn't, it's not the real thing, right? The real thing is what they can't stop. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's what I'm promoting. Right? And that's what we have to kind of keep sort of moving with. So moving forward with the planning, moving forward. And it's like finally this year, like feeling like can move forward with things. But see, that's where they almost want us to go there so they can shut it down again. And that's, I think, what the sort of part of the plan is. But I don't know if it's going to work this time. Okay. Oh man, a lot of old world money. Old families are dying. Old families are moving, are shifting. That money is no longer available to them in the way that it had been. Like that part of that world is no longer, in a way. It's almost entirely shifted. Where the next step of it is you start to see like the aristocracy and the royalty starting to become dismantled. That's another thing that is going to happen. And part of their neo corporate socialistic revolution that they want to create in this upturning is to upturn the royalty aristocratic order that haven't been, but that's part of it, is using them as like part of that straw man scapegoat, go after them, right? And they're almost preparing for it. And religion is another part of it, like this, but this is the emperor, right? But like, okay, with the Roman Catholic Pope, is he like traditionally like a pope anymore, or is he like this kind of king, this ruler now, right? Or has he when was there really a real pope? I don't know. I'm not per se a big advocate of the papal seat, let's say. And, not entirely opposed to the essence of the religion, because I do feel that all world religions do house those truths that are very crucial, and we need to embrace them. But yet it's the structure, it's the hierarchy, the structure, the system of control that comes from the old world has already been sort of reincorporated and reused. And so it no longer serves, right? And so these people have to kind of make a shift. And that's what we're going to see. We're going to see more and more of that, right? But it's part of this fundamental shift that's taking place. And so the calling really has a lot to do with, well, okay, in our way, we do have to take part in it. We do have to like shift it in the way that we want to see it. How do you want to see things, like, especially like your material world, or how the money, how money is coming in and out of your life, like that kind of thing, and like, because I mean, that's the simple stuff. I'm talking also on the big levels where, yeah, these guys are like, man, they've already made a plan. Like they've already got this plan. Like when the uprising happens, this is what we're going to do. This is who we're going to sacrifice. This is where we're going to go. And they've all got it. This is like an orchestrated thing, like especially in like the Western world, right? So that's kind of like, right? But we might see aspects of it. It might be being called out. It could be that there's a reversal with some of them where they once bought in, they're like, nope, I'm not going there. I'm not letting you destroy this. I'm not sure, right? This is also just kind of what I'm picking up, right? But it's this, and it's connected to the money. And like here, our money has the queen on the back, RIP the queen. But, and that's her money. That's what this is talking about. So where do the nuts and bolts of that really sort of exist? Like, where is it? It's with the money all over the world, right? And so that's part of what they're really trying to do. And that's what I said, actually, I don't know if I said in a reading, but we were talking about this, and it's just like, yeah, like, I mean, they wanted the digital global currency years ago. They want to trigger it next month. They want it now, right? So I think that's what's being sort of denied of them. And so the more that's denied of them, the more there's going to be open war. Because that's what they got. That's what it is. And it turns into something entirely different. And that's what we see with Middle East, Ukraine. It's spreading, right? So anyway, kind of like, well, it's definitely a little like, it's a lot like pre-World War II, but there's a mix of before World War I and, a mix of like, just before the French Revolution. And I'm hoping that there's a part of it that the American Revolution has a big part to play in it, because that's the one example of creating, I think, something that has bore more positive fruit than negative, and has given us freedom and ability to be empowered as an individual, but also within the group, within the family, right? Within the community, all of that. But yet the individual rights and the ability to pursue freedom and happiness has not been something ever. I mean, kind of. There's little tidbits throughout, the last 6,000 years of what we know of history. But no, there's not. There's not many examples of this. And better yet, like, yeah, it's not perfect though, right? There's nothing perfect about it, because it did have its terror in a manner. It did have its political violence, and all the things that revolutions sort of bring. But this is kind of where we're at. I don't really see us in this state of like the Americans, American Civil War, more like it. Yeah, it's closer to that, I think. Okay, what else do we need to hear? What else is coming? What else will help in our week? Okay, so now everybody at home that's watching, I want you to leave a comment especially if you're interested and you do tarot readings yourself but what you pick up with this card here, the Queen of Wands. And I want to hear what people have to say about it, right? Whether they actually, because remember, this is a carryover from the last spread and it talks about some of these women and people, but is this referring to an actual person or is this an energy? And how would you read this? Do you read this as the Queen of Wands? So yeah, leave a comment. Tell me what you think. And I'm curious on what people have to say, right? So yeah, this new impulse, this new energy, finally the fire is under people's butts, right? So the Ace of Wands is fire, right? So, but then Ace, and when it's the right side up, is positive forward impetus, forward, the will to move forward, the will to engage, the will to act is there. The will to create, the ideas, the inspiration is there. And that's kind of how I see the Queen of Wands as well. She's a very inspiring card, but skilled. She's very skilled. So it's like, what happens with the inspiration? How does it all come together, right? It's interesting if you really look deep into this card, and it's the same with the King of Wands. There's a lot of symbolism in this card, and it's very alchemical. It talks about alchemy. It talks about the process of alchemy and how to engage that lower part of ourselves and to enlighten it, to take the lead of the egoic nature, of the distorted egoic nature, and to turn it and to transmute it into gold, into the spiritual essence of gold. And so in a way, sometimes she does represent, same with the King, can represent like the golden part, like the person after they've transmuted and they're there to show us. That's why it's inspiring. The card, she's like the sunflowers always face the sun. Like if you have a potted sunflower and it'll turn to the sun, right? It always faces the sun. And it's some traditions, and like, especially like North American and South American traditions, like with like spiritual warriorship and stuff, they see the sunflowers representing the spiritual warrior, representing in the sense that they always face the sun, the generator of life. Okay. And that's what we got to do. It's like facing life, being, yes, I can do this, and sort of being in love with, I guess, what we're doing. So we got to ask ourselves, like, do we have our magic wand with us? Like, I mean, this staff, it's a wand, right? It took a lot of skill. That's your skill set. Those are your tools. Are those set? The crown on her head is the crowning of the enlightened consciousness of spiritual consciousness. So are you connected? Is your lower self connected with the higher self? Is there a clear connection to source? Or are you wearing a false crown, right? Meaning false beliefs, false thoughts, right? False thoughts around self, right? Because remember, we're talking about the transmutation part, right? And then in her other hand, which she's kind of holding like the wand or the rod, right, is the flower. So what are we offering? What are we planting? What are we producing? Right? And so, and she's got her ally with her guardian, which is the black cat. So she can feel safe crossing the passage, crossing the barrier, moving over to the other side. Because it's all a go. She's looked after, right? And so she's seated within her true self. And the lions too, that's kind of what we're talking about. It's like the will, but yeah, astral light with the lions, your astral form, right? But like the seated, like she's seated well. Like she's ready to go over here. She's ready to sort of do what's needed here, but she's not reactive. But it goes more in line too with our soul direction and what we want to accomplish and what we're moving forward within our lives, right? And so like that fool, like taking the leap. So in some ways, many of us have to take a leap of faith, taking that leap into the unknown to sort of accomplish this new start, right? But yet also energetically, like with this impulse, with the movement of the world, it's sort of necessary. That's actually what helps flip this guy over so that it's no longer reversed. Because when it's reversed, it's very like up and down, dualistic. One side fights the other side, back and forth. There's no commonality, right? But the commonality is the people that have courage, that have transmuted their pain from the past or any kind of scenarios, but actually take this on and move with it, right? So that's how I see it, right? And so, and like, I'm not even seeing this as a person per se, but this could be a very prominent woman in the world, a leader that, but it could be anything though. Like she could, and it could be various different people too that are showing us this. And that's important. It's super important. We need those examples, right? And we can take on that Queen of Wands, right? The fire is within us, right? That's really what she's sort of saying. Okay, everybody. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. So hit that like button and leave a comment. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And I hope you have a wonderful time. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care.